The story of the Council, 1970s Harlem's forgotten syndicate. Before modern drug empires, before the crack era, there was a secret group in Harlem that controlled everything, from heroin to money to power. They weren't loud, they weren't flashy, but they ran the streets like a corporation. This was the Council. In this video, we're diving into one of the most powerful yet forgotten crime organizations in American history. You'll learn who the Council was, how they built their empire in 1970s Harlem, and why their influence still echoes today. Stick around, because this story isn't just about crime, it's about strategy, power, and control. Part 1, Harlem in the 1970s. To understand the Council, you first need to understand the context of Harlem in the 1970s. The neighborhood was facing deep economic decline, factories and businesses were closing, leaving unemployment rates high and opportunities scarce. Poverty was widespread, and entire communities struggled just to meet basic needs. Public services were stretched thin, schools were underfunded, and crime rates were rising as a consequence of systemic neglect and social instability. At the same time, heroin had flooded the streets of Harlem, creating a crisis of addiction that was tearing families apart. The drug was cheap, highly addictive, and widely available, leaving many young people trapped in cycles of dependency and crime. Communities were being reshaped by this epidemic, and traditional social structures were weakening under the pressure. But in this environment of scarcity and crisis, opportunity presented itself in a darker form. Young, ambitious men saw a chance to gain financial independence and influence in a world where legitimate avenues were blocked. For some, entering the heroin trade was more than survival. It was a way to assert control over their lives and their neighborhoods. This mix of desperation, ambition, and strategy set the stage for the rise of the Council, a syndicate that would quietly dominate Harlem's drug trade while operating with a level of organization and discipline that mirrored a corporate enterprise. Part 2, the birth of the Council. The Council wasn't a typical street gang. Unlike most drug organizations of the time, it didn't revolve around a single, dominant leader. Instead, it functioned as a coalition of powerful drug dealers who came together with a shared interest in cooperation rather than competition. In many ways, it operated like a corporate boardroom where decisions were made collectively, and each member had clearly defined responsibilities and territories. Each member maintained control over their own operations, but they coordinated closely to ensure stability across Harlem. This meant regulating pricing, managing supply chains, and making strategic decisions together. By working in unison, the Council avoided the kind of turf wars and violent conflicts that usually characterized street-level drug trade. Violence was used sparingly and strategically, not recklessly, because chaos was bad for business. This cooperative model marked a significant departure from the norm. Where most drug operations relied on intimidation and conflict to expand, the Council relied on organization, discipline, and careful planning. Members focused on long-term growth and maintaining influence rather than short-term gains through violence. Their structure allowed them to dominate Harlem's heroin market quietly and efficiently, creating both power and stability in an environment that was otherwise unpredictable and dangerous. In short, the Council showed that the drug trade could be run like a business, with strategy, coordination, and shared goals at its core. Part 3, key figures and leadership style. One of the most well-known figures associated with the Council was Nicky Barnes, often called Mr. Untouchable for his ability to evade law enforcement while running a vast heroin network in Harlem. Barnes became a symbol of power, wealth, and influence during the 1970s, representing the reach and sophistication of the Council. However, what made the Council truly unique was its organizational structure. No single person held absolute authority over the group. Unlike many traditional gangs where leadership was centralized and often enforced through fear, the Council made decisions collectively. with each member having a voice in strategic choices. Members respected each other's territories, operations, and influence, which minimized conflicts and created a cooperative system. This level of mutual respect was unusual in the drug trade, where competition often led to violent turf wars. By maintaining clear boundaries and a shared understanding of each person's role, the council achieved stability that most criminal organizations could not sustain. In many ways, the council functioned like a legitimate business. They focused on efficiency, long-term profitability, and minimizing risk, rather than relying solely on intimidation or brute force. Members invested in their operations, coordinated supply chains, and even managed finances strategically. They were not just street-level dealers. They were entrepreneurs operating a highly organized and disciplined criminal enterprise, setting a blueprint for future networks. Part 4. How the council operated. The council's operations were highly organized. They controlled heroin distribution across Harlem and beyond. They had trusted suppliers, reliable networks, and strict internal rules. Violence was not their first option. It was bad for business. Instead, they focused on efficiency, controlled pricing, shared information, coordinated supply chains. They also invested their money into legitimate businesses. This helped them clean their profits and build influence outside the streets. In many ways, they operated like a corporate syndicate hidden in plain sight. Part 5. Power and influence. At their peak, the council had massive influence. They weren't just controlling drugs, they were shaping the economy of Harlem. Money flowed through their networks. People depended on them for jobs, protection, and opportunity. But power like that doesn't stay hidden forever. The media began to notice. Law enforcement began to pay attention. And eventually, the federal government stepped in. Part 6. The beginning of the end. The downfall of the council didn't happen overnight. It started with increased surveillance and investigations. Authorities began building cases against key members, tracking their money, and mapping their networks. But the real turning point came from within. Nicky Barnes, once one of the most powerful figures in Harlem, was arrested. Facing life in prison, he made a decision that would change everything. He cooperated with the government. Part 7. Collapse of the Syndicate. When Barnes began providing information, the structure of the council started to break apart. Members were arrested, operations were exposed, trust disappeared. The very system that made them strong, their connections and coordination, also made them vulnerable. Once one piece fell, the rest followed. By the early 1980s, the council was no longer the dominant force it once was. Part 8. Legacy and impact. Even though the council faded, its influence didn't disappear. It set the blueprint for future drug organizations. The idea of running street operations like a business, structured, strategic, and organized, became more common. Later groups, especially during the crack era, would take similar approaches, though often with more violence. The council showed that power didn't always come from chaos. Sometimes it came from control. Conclusion. The story of the council is a reminder that history often forgets the groups that operate quietly. They didn't seek attention. They didn't chase headlines. But for a time, they controlled one of the most important neighborhoods in America and changed the way underground economies worked. If you found this story interesting, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And if you want more deep dives into hidden power structures and real-life stories, check out the next video.